Maya Rivera's hands, though meticulously clean, still bore the faint, ghost-like stains of 1,000 different colors under her fingernails. They were the hands of an artist, a creator, a woman who had built her empire, brick by spray-painted brick. Her gallery, Urban Canvas, was the hottest contemporary art space in downtown Los Angeles, a sleek, minimalist haven carved out of a converted warehouse. It was a testament to her journey from the gritty, paint-flecked alleyways of her youth to the polished concrete floors of the city's art world elite. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, art wasn't a luxury, it was an escape. Maya's first canvas was the sprawling, forgotten brick wall of a derelict factory. Under the pseudonym Ghost, she had become a local legend, her vibrant, politically charged murals appearing overnight, beautifying the urban decay and giving a voice to the voiceless. The police, however, had called it vandalism. Her early years were a dance between creative expression and evading the law, a past she didn't hide but didn't advertise either. Now at 32, she was a legitimate success, a curator and gallery owner who championed emerging artists, especially those whose work challenged the sterile, commercialized art scene. She'd fought for her seat at the table, earning every ounce of respect through her sharp eye, relentless work ethic, and unwavering belief that great art could come from anywhere, even a spray can. The bell above the gallery door chimed, announcing an arrival that seemed to suck the creative, bohemian air out of the room, replacing it with the stifling scent of old money and entitlement. In walked Genevieve Sterling, a woman who wore her wealth like a suit of armor. Genevieve's fortune had been seeded generations ago in railroads and oil, and she had never known a day of genuine work. Her position on the board of the prestigious Sterling Arts Foundation was a birthright, not an achievement. She considered herself a patron of the arts, but in reality she was merely a collector of status symbols. She didn't see the soul in a piece, she saw the auction record. Her world was one of private viewings, exclusive galas, and a deep, ingrained prejudice against anyone who hadn't been born into her rarefied atmosphere. Maya was in her element, wearing paint-splattered designer jeans and a simple black t-shirt, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She was in the middle of discussing a new installation with her team when Genevieve approached, her heels clicking an imperious rhythm on the floor. "Excuse me," Genevieve said, her voice dripping with condescension. She didn't look at Maya, but rather through her, her gaze fixed on a large, chaotic yet brilliant canvas on the far wall. "I'm here to see the new collection. Can you get the owner for me? I don't have an appointment, but my name is Genevieve Sterling. I'm sure she'll make time." Maya offered a calm, professional smile. "I'm Maya Rivera, the owner. Welcome to Urban Canvas, Miss Sterling. How can I help you?" Genevieve's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. She gave Maya a slow, dismissive once-over, her eyes lingering on the faint splash of neon pink on Maya's forearm. A smirk played on her lips. "You're the owner? How quaint." The word hung in the air, heavy and insulting. I was expecting someone a little more established. The implicit challenge was clear. In Genevieve's world, gallery owners wore Chanel suits and spoke in hushed, reverent tones. They didn't have paint under their nails or the fiery, untamed energy of the streets in their eyes. "I established this gallery myself 5 years ago," Maya replied, her voice even, refusing to be baited. "The piece you're admiring is by an artist named EXO. It's a powerful commentary on consumer culture." Genevieve scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. Yes, the political nonsense. What I'm interested in is the artist everyone is talking about. The one they call Ghost. I've been told they are the next big thing, and I intend to acquire a piece before the rabble drives the price up. I assume you can facilitate that." Maya's professional smile tightened. Ghost's work is elusive. They choose where and when their art is seen. It's not exactly available for private acquisition. Genevieve leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "Listen, I don't know what kind of back alley operation you're running here, but let me be clear. I get what I want. Everyone has a price. Find this Ghost for me. I'm sure a girl like you," she said, her eyes once again flicking over Maya's casual attire, "could use the commission. Now be a dear and fetch me a sparkling water while I look around." Without waiting for a reply, she turned her back on Maya, already treating the gallery owner like the hired help she so clearly believed her to be. The battle lines had been drawn. Genevieve saw a girl from the streets, someone to be ordered around, completely oblivious to the fact that she was demanding that Maya Rivera hunt down herself. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in passive aggression, all orchestrated by Genevieve Sterling. She made Urban Canvas her personal clubhouse, dropping by unannounced, always during the busiest hours. She'd sweep through the space, loudly critiquing the art with a layman's ignorance, pronouncing artists' names incorrectly, and comparing every piece unfavorably to something she'd seen at Sotheby's. Her true mission, however, was to harass Maya about procuring a piece by ghost. "Any luck with our little street urchin?" she'd ask, her voice loud enough for other clients to hear. "Surely you have connections in that world. You seem the type." Each visit was a fresh jab, a reminder that Genevieve saw her not as a peer, but as a pretender. Maya, ever the professional, weathered the storm with a calm exterior that belied her growing fury. She deflected, she demurred, she explained the ethos of street art, that its value lay in its public, ephemeral nature. Her refusals only fueled Genevieve's obsession. Being told no was a foreign concept to the heiress, and she was determined to break Maya. The inevitable explosion came at the Sterling Arts Foundation's annual gala. It was the absolute pinnacle of the LA social calendar, a sea of couture gowns, black ties, and air kisses held in the cavernous marble hall of the city's most esteemed art museum. An invitation was a validation, a sign that one had truly arrived. When Maya's invitation came, she knew it wasn't an olive branch from Genevieve but a summons. It was a power play. Genevieve wanted Maya in her arena on her terms. Dressed in a stunning yet understated crimson gown that spoke of confidence rather than conformity, Maya attended. She was there to represent her gallery, to connect with curators, and to prove that she belonged. For the first hour she navigated the glittering crowd with ease, speaking with collectors who respected her eye and critics who admired her gallery's bold curation. She felt a sense of pride, a feeling of belonging she had carved out for herself. Then the lights dimmed and Genevieve Sterling ascended the stage to give the keynote address. She started with practiced platitudes, thanking the donors and praising the foundation's unwavering commitment to artistic pedigree. Then her tone shifted, a predatory glint appearing in her eyes as her gaze swept the room and landed, with theatrical precision, on Maya. "Tonight, we celebrate true artistry. We celebrate collectors with discernment, with history, with background," she began, her voice laced with meaning. "But in our modern world, we must be vigilant. The lines have become blurred. We see interlopers, individuals who attempt to infiltrate our world, who lack the proper foundation, the proper respect for what we do." A nervous murmur rippled through the hall. Maya felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She knew. "Some of you may have visited a new, fashionable gallery downtown, Urban Canvas," Genevieve continued, her voice dripping with mock praise. "It is run by a young woman, Maya Rivera." She gestured grandly in Maya's direction, and a spotlight swung to pin her in its glare. Maya stood frozen, the wine glass in her hand suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. "Ms. Rivera has been lauded as a fresh new face in our community," Genevieve purred, the sound sharp as claws. "But I believe in transparency. I believe in knowing who we are really dealing with. So I had my people do a little digging into Ms. Rivera's artistic beginnings. And what they found was not a prestigious art school or a mentorship with a master. Oh no." She paused for dramatic effect, letting the silence stretch. "They found a police record. A string of citations for vandalism, destruction of public property, and trespassing. Because you see, our esteemed gallery owner, this curator, began her career not in a studio, but in the filth of back alleys, spray painting walls like a common delinquent. She is none other than the notorious graffiti tagger. Ghost." Gasps echoed through the marble hall. The revelation landed like a bomb. All eyes were on Maya. A mixture of shock, morbid curiosity, and thinly veiled disdain on the faces around her. The collectors she had been laughing with moments before now stared at her, as if she were something she'd stepped in. They took a collective, subtle step back, creating a halo of isolation around her. Genevieve's smile was triumphant. This was the kill shot. "So I ask you," she boomed, her voice full of righteous indignation, "is this who we want as a gatekeeper of culture? A woman who built her name on criminality? Someone who scrawled her name on dumpsters and now presumes to stand among us? She tries to sell the work of so-called artists from the street while hiding the fact that she is one herself. It is an insult to every legitimate artist and patron in this room. She is unworthy of the respect she demands, and her success is a sham, built on a past she tried to bury." The humiliation was a physical force, hot and suffocating. Maya stood alone, trapped in the spotlight's glare. She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, to explain that street art was a legitimate movement, that her past wasn't a source of shame but the very foundation of her expertise. "Street art is a valid and powerful form of expression," Maya began, her voice shaking slightly but clear. "My past isn't a secret, it's my strength. It's why I understand the artists I represent. But her words were lost in the rising tide of scandalized whispers. A criminal? She lied to us. I can't believe the foundation allowed her in. Genevieve watched from the stage, her expression one of pure, unadulterated victory. She had not just humiliated Maya. She had attempted to erase her, to strip her of her hard-won identity and rebrand her with the one word she knew this crowd would never forgive: unworthy. In that moment, Maya felt the cold, crushing weight of their judgment, an outsider once more, exposed and utterly alone. The silence in the hall was thick with judgment, a suffocating blanket woven from the whispers and disdainful stares of the elite. Maya stood frozen in its center, her face pale, her heart hammering against her ribs. Genevieve remained on the stage, a smug queen surveying the execution she had just ordered. It was in this charged, hateful quiet that a new voice cut through the air, calm and authoritative. That is quite enough, Genevieve. All heads turned. From a table near the front, a man was slowly getting to his feet. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with a mane of silver hair and eyes that held the piercing intelligence of a man who had seen everything the art world had to offer twice. This was Alistair Finch. Alistair was not merely a collector. He was a kingmaker, a legendary self-made critic and patron from London. His word could launch an unknown into superstardom or relegate a masterpiece to obscurity. He rarely attended events like this, finding them dreadfully boring. His unexpected presence had been a topic of conversation all evening. Now it was about to become the main event. He walked toward the stage, and the crowd parted for him as if by instinct. He didn't ask for the microphone. He simply took it from a stunned-looking Genevieve, his movements measured and deliberate. He turned to face the audience, his gaze sweeping over the sea of shocked and curious faces. For the past 30 years, Alistair began, his voice resonant and carrying the weight of indisputable authority, I have traveled the world. I have seen art in palaces and in slums, on pristine gallery walls and on bomb-scarred buildings. I have learned that talent, true, undeniable talent, respects no social class. It is a force of nature. It does not care about your last name or the balance of your trust fund. He paused, letting his words sink in, a quiet rebuke to the room's collective snobbery. He then turned his gaze, sharp as a scalpel, to Genevieve, who was now looking deeply uncomfortable. You speak of this artist, Ghost, as if you have uncovered some dirty little secret, Alistair said, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intense. The only thing you have uncovered tonight, Mrs. Sterling, is your own profound and breathtaking ignorance. A collective gasp, louder and more shocked than the one that had condemned Maya, rippled through the hall. Genevieve's face went from triumphant to ashen in a single devastating moment. While you have been busy collecting names and chasing trends, Alistair continued, now addressing the entire room, some of us have been searching for an artist of actual significance. An artist with a voice so powerful, so authentic. It has defined the last decade of urban contemporary art. I, and several of the most respected curators in the world, have been searching for ghosts for years. Not to acquire them like a handbag, but to celebrate them. He took a step forward, his eyes finding Maya in the crowd. The spotlight, which had been her prison, now seemed to soften, to become a halo. The work of Ghost is raw, political, and brilliant. It holds a mirror up to our society, to the very consumption and classism that is so grotesquely on display here tonight. It is art of the highest caliber. And yes, Ms. Rivera is Ghost. Alistair's face broke into a rare, genuine smile as he looked directly at Maya. I discovered this fact 6 months ago. Not through private investigators but through proper, respectful research. I approached Ms. Rivera, and we have been in conversation ever since. I did not expose her because true artists are not commodities to be revealed for sport. They choose their own path. He turned back to the stunned, silent audience. The reversal was absolute. The whispers were no longer about Maya's criminal past, but about Genevieve's catastrophic mistake. They were about the fact that Alistair Finch, the Alistair Finch, had been courting this woman they had just ostracized. Then came the final obliterating blow. Genevieve, you stand here on a stage funded by your father's money, passing judgment on a woman who built an empire with her own 2 hands and a can of spray paint, Alistair declared, his voice ringing with finality. You tried to humiliate her for her past, when you should have been begging her for an introduction. Because, you see, the reason I am in Los Angeles this week, the reason I am even at this tedious gala, is to finalize the details of a project I have been planning for 2 years. He walked off the stage through the stunned crowd directly to Maya. He took her hand, his expression one of deep respect and admiration. He raised her hand slightly, as if presenting her to the room. I am here to formally invite Maya Rivera, also known as Ghost, to be the headline artist for a solo retrospective I am curating next fall. Not in some back alley gallery, he said, his voice rising so everyone could hear. At the Tate Modern in London. The world tilted on its axis. Tate Modern, the global epicenter of contemporary art. It was not just vindication, it was an ascension. Genevieve stood frozen on the stage, a statue of mortification, her public execution having spectacularly backfired, leaving her as its sole victim. Maya looked at Alistair, then at the sea of utterly dumbfounded faces, and felt the hot sting of humiliation being washed away by a tidal wave of triumph. The instant Alistair Finch finished speaking, the spell of shocked silence shattered. The atmosphere in the grand hall transformed from a public shaming into a frenzied coronation. The very same people who had edged away from Maya just minutes ago now swarmed toward her, a frantic tide of opportunism. Phones were suddenly out, not to record her downfall, but in the desperate hope of snapping a photo with the art world's newest and most important star. Maya, darling, simply brilliant, gushed a critic who had looked through her moments before. I must have a piece from your gallery. I'll pay anything, pleaded a collector who had whispered criminal under his breath. Their hypocrisy was so blatant it was almost comical. Maya, however, felt a profound calm settle over her. She met their fawning praise and desperate business offers with a cool, polite grace that offered no purchase. She nodded, accepted a few business cards with a non-committal smile, but her eyes sought out her team. Her gallery manager and 2 of her assistants, who had been watching in horror from the back of the room, now pushed their way through the crowd, their faces alight with fierce pride and relief. They flanked her, a small loyal island in a sea of sycophants. Their genuine joy was the only validation she needed. Across the room, Genevieve Sterling was making her escape. No longer the triumphant queen on the stage, she was a specter of humiliation. She stumbled down the side stairs, her face a mask of disbelief and rage, ignoring the pitying and scornful glances that followed her. The gala she had meticulously planned to cement her status had become the site of her social suicide. The Sterling Arts Foundation would spend the next week issuing press releases and doing damage control, but the harm was done. Genevieve would be forced into a stilted, public apology to Ms. Rivera, an act that would only underscore her crushing defeat. She had tried to define Maya by her past and in the end was exposed as having no future in the world she so desperately wanted to rule. Alistair gently touched Maya's arm, steering her away from the clamor and toward a quiet, private balcony overlooking the city lights. A bit much, isn't it? He said with a wry smile. A bit, Maya agreed, taking a deep, steadying breath of the cool night air. I want you to know, Alistair said, his voice sincere, my offer has nothing to do with this spectacle. I meant every word I said about your work. Ghost is a phenomenon. But Maya Rivera, the woman who built a business from scratch and protected her artistic integrity against vultures like that, she is just as impressive. Your refusal to be bought, your loyalty to your principles, that is rarer and far more valuable than any painting. His words struck a deeper chord than the roar of the crowd. They weren't just praise for her art, they were an affirmation of her character. Every difficult choice, every moment she had stuck to her guns when it would have been easier to sell out, felt vindicated in that moment. The shame Genevieve had tried to brand her with had been cauterized, leaving behind not a scar, but a mark of strength. The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind. The story of the street artist unmasked at the Sterling Gala became an international sensation, but the narrative was one of triumph, not scandal. Urban Canvas was mobbed daily. Collectors who had once turned up their noses at her artists were now on year-long waiting lists. True to his word, Alistair Finch became not just a patron, but a mentor and a friend. He didn't just want to exhibit Ghost, he wanted to invest in Maya Rivera. During a meeting in her sun-drenched office, surrounded by the art she championed, he laid out a proposal for a partnership. He wanted to help her open urban canvas galleries in London and New York, providing the capital and connections to build a global platform for the kind of raw, authentic talent she was uniquely qualified to identify. The Tate Modern exhibition was no longer just a distant dream, it was her current project. The story ended not in the glittering chaos of a gala, but months later in the quiet, creative sanctuary of her studio. Maya stood before a massive, blank canvas, a spray can in one hand, a charcoal pencil in the other. On a nearby table lay the initial sketches for her London retrospective. The central piece was a self-portrait, a diptych. One panel depicted a shadowy figure with a spray can, illuminated by a single streetlight against a brick wall. The other showed a confident woman in a crimson dress, standing in a spotlight, her face turned toward the viewer, her eyes clear and unashamed. It was ghost and it was Maya. It was vandalism and it was fine art. It was the alley and it was the museum. She was no longer hiding one part of herself to make the other more palatable to the world. The incident had forced her to integrate her identities, to claim her entire story. She looked at the two sketches, the two halves of her journey, and for the first time, she saw them not as a contradiction to be reconciled, but as a single, powerful, and complete work of art. Her success wasn't a rejection of her past, but the ultimate fulfillment of it. Character and effort, she knew with unshakable certainty, were the only things that ever truly mattered.